Chair Eberly, Commissioner Causey,
Here.
Commissioner Shea,
Here.
Vice Chair Kraus,
Here.
Commissioner Savage,
Here.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stimler. All right, Vice Chair, you have a quorum.
So, Minka, is it all right we open public comment?
Yes, ma'am.
How long can we hold it open?
We can just hold it open for the time to see how many people have raised their hands. So we can't just hold it open for like 15 minutes. So we'll look how many people have raised their hand, and then you can make a determination on how much individual time to each person that you would like to give. So you can make the call to.
Patrick has given me the high sign that I need to turn on my microphone. So you can make the decision based on the number of folks. So you can open up oral communication for items not on the agenda, and then I can give you input on how many hands we have raised.
Okay. Could you tell me how many people are online?
We have 2 people online.
Well, this is the time for public comment on items not on the agenda. This is the section where people can talk to the HRC and express their views. These are the views of individuals and not the views of the city or the HRC. In Palo Alto, we're committed to a culture of acceptance where all members of our diverse community feel included, feel safe, and feel respected. We encourage all speakers to honor these values and express their message without intimidation, discrimination, or language that disrespects any person. The public should know, however, that the Brown Act requires cities to accept public comment, and the US Constitution provides strong support for freedom of speech. The city honors these rights, even if we strongly disagree with the speaker's message. That's really, really important. We encourage open dialogue. On an additional note, if you've come tonight to talk about the conflict in Israel or Gaza, or additional comments on local experiences of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, you're able to speak during the public comment portion of this meeting. Item 3 is the procedural work that we'll be doing to establish committees and get ready for a March retreat on these topics. I think I've said what I need to say. It's really important that we observe some decorum and rules, period. It's about human dignity. And these chambers have been a little tumultuous. So let's go forward.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. And I will look to the names listed, and the first speaker will be Allison. So Allison, you have 3 minutes, Chair?
Yes.
And you can come right there to speak.
So I can yield my time to Saritha. I'm very, very brief. I just found out about this meeting recently, so I am deeply grateful for
We
all that.
can't hear you.
Oh,
well.
can you hear me now?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, sorry. I want to say how deeply grateful I was for the last listening session and how respected I felt, and how grateful I am that you are seeking our feedback. So I speak as my, as in my personal capacity, not as a government employee. I think it's so important for all of us to feel safe. And a lot of us Jews have not felt as safe. And so I really appreciate all that you can do to help us feel better about this. The debate that night when the candidates were not allowed to speak, I felt was a problem, and I would appreciate if future discussions about that are important for our community allow that everyone speak. There are laws that protect this, and I think it's important to do that. Also, as a mental health professional, I've seen a lot of post-traumatic stress evidence around children who have witnessed family members die, people who are in Israel who know personally have experienced family deaths and rapes. And so that I think it's important that whatever is done includes mental health. I, as a mental health professional, would be happy to contribute to that. And so those are my comments. And again, deeply grateful for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sarit. You have 3 minutes.
First of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the Commission. These are very difficult times for our city, given the steep rise in both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Our communities are traumatized, and it is no trivial task to engage in such a process when the climate is tense and emotions are running high. We applaud our city and this commission for taking the initiative to learn more about the concerns and fears we're facing locally, for engaging in this very thoughtful process, and for your commitment to implementing concrete, actionable steps that will not only ensure that each and every resident feels safe and welcome in our city, but also strengthen our peaceful coexistence in meaningful and sustainable ways. There is no place for hate, violence, or discrimination against any group, race, religion, ethnicity, or nationality in the city. It is not the Palo Alto way. So on behalf of the Jewish community, we offer our full partnership to this commission, its guidance, and its efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Aram James. Aram, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Aram, can you please unmute yourself?
I apologize. I thought I had it and I didn't, and I was looking down. So I hope everybody's doing well tonight. I'm a 75-year-old Jewish man, and I am, of course, strongly opposed to the genocide that's going on in Palestine. Somebody was talking about the death of a child and mental health. Well, right now, can you imagine hundreds of Palestinian children, thousands of Palestinian children, thousands of adults have been killed and their property, their homes destroyed. You think they feel safe? I don't believe they do. Tonight at Stanford, I'm going to try to go over there at 8 o'clock. 100 days, the Palestinian Stanford students have had tents there to protest what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank too. In the West Bank, they've been destroying more and more Palestinian homes while we've been watching Gaza. So the Zionists are out of control. The white Jewish supremacists that support this are out of control. I'm ashamed as a Jew to see so many Jewish white supremacists supporting the slaughter. So I would also like you to take a look for the congressional race at Ahmed Mustafa, who is running on a platform of freeing the Palestinian people, and that we call for an immediate, not a bilateral, but a ceasefire today, not tomorrow. I'm not talking about whether or not the hostages are released. Sure, I'd like the hostages to be released, but that's not a reason to stop the killing that's going on as we speak. In reference to the congressional debate that was occurring, I blame the city council for that, for failure to agendize the issue of an immediate ceasefire. They can agendize, listen to it, both sides, and they can still vote against it. But what happens, and I'm specifically referring to a case called Virginia, Richmond Newspapers versus Virginia, where it was a First Amendment issue that was not on all fours with this, but in that particular case, the defense attorney, a prosecutor in the court decided they wanted to close a courtroom on a fourth trial the gentleman was having on a murder case. And they all agreed to do that. The newspapers came and said, I don't care if you all agree, you can't do that. And there was a really wonderful discussion of the history of the First Amendment access as it applies to courtrooms, but it also applies persuasively to our city hall chambers. That's the town hall. That's where the most controversial issues of the day are supposed to be discussed. Republican Richmond newspaper versus Virginia says when they trace the history, when you don't allow people to have access to their institution to express the First Amendment rights, then people engage in self-help. Okay. I didn't call what occurred was an interruption, a disruption. I called that an expression of free speech and upset that
Thank
the council.
Thank you,
Okay.
Aram. Your time is up. I do not, let me see if there's any other raised hands or members of the individuals in the chambers that wish to speak to this item. I mean, to items not on the agenda. I do believe I have another hand. It's community member. Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes. You need to unmute yourself.
Minka, it's Julie. I think it might have been me when I was in the Zoom, not as a panelist, but as a community member, and I was raising my hand to try to get attention.
Okay, so would you like staff to ensure that you get in as a panelist? We will take care of that right now, Councilmember.
I believe I already am. Thank you.
Okay, but thank you. I see no other cards or no other raised hands.
Okay. Are there any agenda changes, additions, and/or deletions, commissioners? Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes.
I do see, I'm just trying to address the issue possibly of the council member because I see your hand raised once again. So let me just allow her to talk and see if we need to address some kind of issue. Council member?
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Hold on just 1 minute. Do we have more than one person?
Can you hear me? I think you have more than one person.
Okay,
Sorry,
the
this
person
is
who's
Julie.
just speaking, can you hold on just a moment, please?
Sure. Okay.
Ms. Vanderswag, this is Councilmember Lithcott Hames. I am not, I apologize if my hand was raised. I've tried to take it down, and I believe it is now down, and I have nothing to add to this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes, and what are you attempting to
Okay.
speak on?
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out if I should do it through the phone or
Yes, but
the
I'm
headphone.
asking if you're asking to speak to oral communications for items not on the agenda. I'm unsure.
I just wanted to clarify. Can you tell me who was just speaking because I'm on the Zoom and they said something about Jewish supremacists, which I found very offensive. So equating Jewish people with white supremacy is just unacceptable.
Well, I mean, you can listen to the tape to find out who that was. The time for oral communications is over, and
Okay.
Well,
Was that person on Zoom or were they in person?
they were on Zoom. Okay. thank
Okay, I
you.
would be really concerned about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I did
Okay.
have something to add to the agenda.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed my spot there, but we just have a small business item about the King Art Prize, and they would like a commissioner to be involved.
Yeah.
So if we could
Thank
add
you
that
so
to the
much,
agenda.
Commissioner Stimbler. I was going to bring that up too.
Yep.
So we can bring that up during, if you'd like to bring that up during commissioner reports, or I can
Okay.
bring that up staff reports.
Okay, I didn't know if that needed to be agenda item, but I can do it as a commissioner report.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're okay now? Let's move on to the approval of the minutes from last month. Do I have any recommendations?
I vote to approve.
Do I have a second?
I second.
So Minka, do I accept it or do you speak?
I do not need to speak. Elena will get on the screen in 1 second, and you will hear who first did it and who seconded it. And that is not the correct language, but that's what's coming to my
Yes.
head.
Generally, we haven't been putting it on the screen because it's
Okay.
pretty language that we use pretty regularly. So if you
Okay.
just go to the vote to approve.
Okay,
Deferring to the expert.
I am deferring to you.
Oh, yes, you will lead the
I
you will
can't hear you.
lead the commissioners in a vote to approve the
Okay.
minutes.
Let's do that.
Yeah, you do the roll call.
I do the roll call. Commissioner Carsey,
Aye.
Commissioner Mary Kate,
Here, or aye.
Commissioner Savage,
Aye.
Commissioner
Shay.
Shay,
Aye.
Vice Chair A. It does pass unanimously. Let's move on to business items. The next is an item involving our federal grant program called Community Development Block Grant Funding, and the allocations for the fiscal year 24 through 25. Staff?
Yes, well, I would just turn it over to Claire Campbell, and she will introduce our other colleagues and consultants that are leading the CDBG process. So Claire, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to turn it over to Rebecca because she's our CDBG lead for the department.
Thank you, Claire and Minka. I'm Rebecca Atkinson, and I'm a planner with the Long Range Planning Division. Other than in regard to CDB projects, you last saw me regarding city rental policies. On the staff team tonight is obviously Claire Campbell here, manager of the Long Range Planning Division, and our very involved city CDBG program consultants from MBI, Tina Roseberry and Brittany Valenzuela. We're excited tonight to bring you the topic of the city's annual CDBG fiscal year annual action plan, and so that your feedback and funding recommendations can be incorporated. Tina will be giving the staff presentation, and the staff team is available to answer any HRC questions. And I believe that there may be some potential CDBG applicants at the meeting tonight that might like to speak. Thank you. Tina?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me back. I was here last year giving a presentation, and again this year, thank you, HRC Commission. And I have a short presentation that kind of gives the process of where we've come from beginning till end and where we go with our recommendations. So let me share my screen. Okay. Rebecca, is everyone seeing the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I can see the screen, thank you.
All right, I'm used to using Teams, so Zoom I only use it infrequently. So tonight we're going to take a look at what should be our recommendations for CDBG funding year 24-25. And then we also have not only CDBG funds, but CARES Act funds, COVID funds from 2020, we'll be spending a majority of the remainder of those funds in this year's action plan. So let me see. Okay. So the purpose of this meeting is to hold a hearing that's required by HUD for every annual action plan and provide the HRC Commission our recommendations and this HRC Selection Committee's recommendations for both sets of funding, CDBG and the CV funds, and provide direction on funding contingency plan. If HUD gives us less, if HUD gives us more than what we've estimated in our presentation and our documentations in the staff memo tonight. Then as a final wrap up, recommend to City Council approval of the draft funding year 2024-25 annual action plan and amended as needed to reflect the HRC recommendations tonight. So just a little bit of the basics. Palo Alto receives funding annually from HUD from their Community Development Block Grant. So when I roll out that acronym CDBG, that's what it really means, Community Development Block Grant. And these program funds provides many entitlements. That's what it's called whenever you get funding regularly, annually from HUD. These entitlements are localities. They have grants and they improve physical, economic, and social conditions for their communities. All activities in Palo Alto must benefit low-income persons. That is a big national objective. We need to make sure that all of our activities are funding. Funding is based on being consistent with the 5-year consolidated plan. That was done in 2020. We'll be talking more about that next year whenever the consolidated plan, the 2025 consolidated plan is due. And we make sure that all of our activities are consistent with the strategies, the needs, priority needs, and goals of that plan. So, and every year subsequent to the 5-year plan, we create an annual action plan. The goals that were in the consolidated plan all revolve around affordable housing, homelessness, strengthening neighborhoods, fair housing, and economic development. So to give you a little bit of a breakdown of how much money and estimated funds from HUD that we have this year, this is kind of a breakout chart of, okay, so we're estimating somewhere around $510,000 from HUD this year. Alta Housing also, there's program income that comes from that subrecipient. We're estimating that to be around $60,000. There's some unspent funds from various funding years, 2021 to 22. There's some funding there, 171,843, and so on. But these funds were programmatic funds that were unspent and need to be reprogrammed. Some of the funds came from Mitchell Park, that activity. They decided not to use CDBG funds, so we're reprogramming that, as well as some unspent funds from prior years. So that totals $1.122 right here, $405.01 from various years, as well as our upcoming entitlement grant. In the beginning, I did say that we have CV funds we're spending also. They have to be spent in the next 2 years. And there was a canceled project, so $34,000 and some change got sent back to that project was canceled. So that added a little bit to our amount to give out. Plus there's a little bit of planning and administrative funds. So we have a total estimated of $119,478 to spend. And before we go into the various activities that were recommended and applied for, everyone should know that the public services, HUD puts a 15% cap on those. And we have to make sure that whatever our estimated amount that they're giving us, that only 15% of that can be spent in 1 year. Other categories that we can spend and have funds on and accept activities for are economic development, housing rehab, public facilities and improvements, and planning and administration. There's also a cap on that, being 20%. When we put it out to our NOFA to let everyone know that we had funds available, that happened October 2nd in 2023. We had a deadline of November 17th of 2023. We received several applicants. We have a 2-year funding cycle here. We're in our 2nd year of that, so we didn't have public services funds available, but because a lot of our public services were completely funded and asked for funding again this year. So then we were funding other things like housing rehab, facilities, and planning administration. So when we go into our public service applicants, these are the subrecipients that we're recommending for funding: Alta Housing, Catholic Charities, Life Moves, Silicon Valley Independent Living, and Project Sentinel. If anyone doesn't know, Project Sentinel does a lot of fair housing work for the city, handling tenant and discrimination cases. In our other categories, economic development, housing, and public facilities applicants, here's a couple that have applied this year, and Rebuilding Together applied actually last year and asked for the same allocation for this year as they did last year. We Care also they have switched their names and officially are upwards now, but they have reapplied for 120,000. Rebuilding Together, a little bit over 73,000. There's community work, and they also go by abode. They're having some changes in their their board charter in their name, and they have applied for housing rehab work for Alma Gardens. That's an existing apartment complex for $404,800. And then there's also public facility project funds worth $317,572 for a total of $915,957 and that 1 penny for moving into our 24-25 allocations. This is the requests. And also the recommendations. There's planning and administration to provide all the assistance needed to administer the program each year. That's worth $114,000. So if we had to add up a variety of things, all the public services and what that adds up to, economic development, housing rehab, public facilities and improvements, as well as the planning administration, as you can see, it equals up to that $1.122 million, which is where we needed to, if we went back to one of our beginning slides, this is the funding level that we needed to be at. So staff worked really hard on providing information on project eligibility, and putting together, what's left in that had to be reprogrammed into the future years. And we have allotted all of our amount of funds. We also have the remaining balance of the CV funds and Move Mountain View, who manages several parking lots that are saved for those individuals who are homeless, who are unsheltered and live possibly in their cars or RVs. But there's several of these parking lots throughout the city, and Move Mountain View is an organization that helps organize and operate those parking lots for $110,000. And then there's some left over to administer those funds for planning administration. So there is a contingency plan, and when we say that, what's happening if HUD does provide an entitlement amount, an allocation that's a little higher, or if it's a little lower. If it's a little higher, the HRC selection committee recommended the following contingency plan. If more funds are received than estimated, to ensure funding caps are met for public services and planning administration categories, to increase funding for life moves in their shelter operations, to make that allocation at least half of what they requested for 24-25. And retain currently recommended funding levels for Project Sentinel, with remaining funds to, if there's more funds, that all those remaining funds would be proportionate share amongst the other public services that are not fully funded. And then as a follow-up here, if there's any other additional funds, they would be put into the uncapped, because remember, public services and planning administration each have caps that HUD recommends that we mandates that we keep tight to the 15 and 20%. So that will go into the public facilities projects if there's more funds, if our funding level is increased. If by chance our funding level is decreased, I'd be sad, staff would be sad. But if that does happen, we'll make sure that public services and planning administrations, that those caps are still met, but we'd have to decrease public service applications proportionately throughout each of the public service entities. If possible, maintain full funding for housing rehab, as well as the economic development, and we would decrease those uncapped funds for public facilities projects. So on our timeline to where we need to be to submit to HUD in May or June, that all depends on when we get our allocation. I constantly am bugging HUD to see when Palo Alto is going to get their annual allocation. They haven't given me a solid date on that. They think it could be somewhere in between mid-February to mid-March, possibly, which might slide this schedule a little bit. The selection committee met in January. We are now meeting here in February. Public review comment period is planned for March and April. Hopefully that doesn't slip when we get our allocation soon. And City Council will meet in May for our submission to HUD in mid-May or as late as June. So our final slide here, recommendations for CDBG and those CDBG's COVID funds. Staff and the HRC selection committee recommend the following. Provide recommendations for fiscal year 24-25 community development block grant and title program. Provide direction for funding contingency plan if the CDBG program allocation is less or greater than we estimated on the staff level, and recommend to City Council approval of the draft fiscal year 24-25 annual action plan amended and as needed to reflect the HRC funding recommendations. Okay, so that's what I have, and I want to open it up for any HRC questions or comments. You can direct them to staff or myself, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more, Tina, about the grantees specifically? I wanted to know more about why you chose them, how you chose them, their size, their ability to do outreach, etc.
Okay, so the city has a 2-year cycle for their applications. So a lot of the same Catholic Charities, Life Moves, Alta Housing, Silicon Valley, SVILC, and Project Sentinel all were applied last year for 2 years of funding. They applied
Okay.
for 2 years of funding. So we didn't request that they apply again because they applied for 2 years originally. There was Peninsula Healthcare applied last year, but did not apply for this year. So that was a new applicant, but did not reapply this year. So the new applicant would be for in the other categories: economic development, housing rehab, and public facilities projects. So do you want me to talk a little bit about our activity? There are those entities that applied last year? Both? Okay.
Okay, just so
Okay.
that we're really educated on what we're approving and moving forward, because you do such good work.
Okay. So Catholic Charities, they provide community services, and they have a long-term care ombudsman program that provides advocacy and complaint investigation for elderly residents in the city. And they applied for $10,000. Then there's Life Moves, shelter operations, and they applied last year for their case managers. And their case managers are very helpful, and they do client intake for shelter individuals, and they apply their case management services to help them out with housing, job searches, referrals, mentoring, all kinds of things that the shelter is providing to those homeless or those at risk for being homeless individuals. And last year, they're estimating that they probably are going to assist 350 individuals this year. They're located in Encina Way, 33 Encina Way.
That's amazing. Go
I
on.
know, right? I know.
Truly
So
amazing.
it is. So Alta Housing, they have a resident support program. So years ago, the city provided some funding for them to acquire a couple buildings and a couple apartment buildings. They did that, and they've been helping those residents and new residents with a variety of support system types of programs. And they offer counseling services, budgeting, life skills, and they give them referrals if they need to do things with their career or career adjustments or changes or job placement types of things. So they help out those residents quite a bit who are living in their Barker Hotel and Alma Place. So we give $14,000 to them. So Alta Housing, they have this thing. So most of the money goes towards salaries for their service coordinator, and who provides at least 40 hours a week services. And they estimate that 131 residents typically are benefit from their services every year.
Thank you.
So then SVILC is Housing and Emergency Housing Services, and they requested $16,500, and they're hoping to provide 115 residents with benefits of one-on-one housing assistance and housing placement. The city does provide funds to Project Sentinel, and they provide housing, fair housing services. So we were able to award them with $18,000, and they provide low to moderate income individuals and families with fair housing services. They may put in a complaint, and Project Sentinel will help them with that complaint, maybe by working with them or the landlord on helping resolve those complaints. And they estimate at least 12 low to moderate individual families will be assisted with that $18,000. And they also help with investigations with if there was a discriminatory type of situation, they try to investigate that and get to the bottom. So that's Project Sentinel. Peninsula Healthcare, oh, wait a minute. That they did not reapply. There's there's We Care. Okay, we'll move down to We Care. And they have requested 120,000. And what they're doing, that is an economic development initiative. They're helping out family childcare enterprises with finding families and finding places for children for daycares. So they have a whole online system that, and this boost program that they utilize to assist in those micro enterprises, those small daycares, with providing better, like, information on how their businesses could be run better, how to like seek and find those families who are looking for childcare, putting that out on the web for the families to be able to find that childcare. They can do virtual look-sees at the interiors of those childcare facilities. And then they also do a lot of coaching for them in the areas that they see the most need for them to be able to increase their business and thrive in the childcare business here in the city. Let's see. Rebuilding Together Peninsula. They have a program called Safe at Home. They requested a little bit over 73,000. And they basically find low to moderate income owner occupied housing units. And they take a look at the safety and codes issues and helping fix those up first, followed by other needs that house may have. And it could be updates with disabilities, improvements. It could be weatherization, new windows, new doors, things that will lower their utility bills. And then lastly is a public facilities and services. So we have put an allocation amount of money into that category for future projects that would improve sidewalks, public facility improvements. Could be sidewalks, handicap accessibility type of improvements, recreation improvements, and a variety of other things we're looking into and working with various departments to find out which projects are priority, and we'll add those to the plan as we are vetting those with the city. Oh, and one last project. Somebody just reminded me, the Alma Gardens abode. So they have, I need to bring up they have an existing complex that has, Brittany, how many units are in Alma Garden Apartments? Is it 15?
That number is 10. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, 10. So 10 units. They have 10 units, and each of those units are at a point where a variety of things need to be done to those units, and they still want to keep them really affordable for low to moderate income. Actually, it's not even moderate. All their apartments are for low income or very low income residents. So they're updating their plumbing systems, their roofing systems, their electrical systems, all in an effort to keep costs down for those residents living there and keep rents affordable. So they have a project that will have a project manager in charge of updating and rehabbing those 10 units.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
I would, Chair, If I
Yes.
may interject, it's common practice to, if you want to call them the subcommittee, the CDBG subcommittee, and they'll give a report on their deliberations.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Can
Not
we
sure who's going to
call-
do that on behalf of the subcommittee?
I think I'm the only one here from the
Okay.
subcommittee. So
Commissioner Akazi.
yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that really fantastic overview. We had a deliberation of, they went over a lot of what was just covered of what these different organizations do, previous requests for funding, and went forward with these recommendations that were just presented. Is there anything else I should say? I think they covered it, and I just wanted to thank for that. I think that you just gave a really fantastic overview about what these organizations do and provide.
Katie, was there any, I'm sorry, Commissioner, was there any feedback or changes based on the HRC's feedback?
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think they took all of our feedback of, we recommended some of these organizations, like they said, if there was a request for, if there were funds left over, the amounts that we thought should stay at, like, I believe we said that, I think this is accurate. I believe you just covered that Alta Housing, if we had additional funding, that would go to Alta Housing. And that is the biggest recommendation I remember off the top of my head.
Can I ask a few more questions?
Certainly. Yeah, it's time for questions.
Okay, great. Just, this is probably for my own education, but how did you define low income and very low income? Sometimes I also see low income referred to in the report, and sometimes it's LMI. So in the HUD goals, I think it was low income and very low income, but throughout the report, it's LMI. So I was just curious, what was the criteria used for income?
Well, HUD provides low income limits. They call it income limits on, and they do it by family size. A family size of 1 should make a maximum of this amount. A family size of 2 should make a maximum of this amount. So they put together those low income limits annually. Sometime in like June or July, we normally get those. So they set them, and you're right, we probably should make it clear, but on those low income, when I say that, those limits, they normally state them as in HUD speak, in their terms, they'll reduce it to an acronym LMI, but
Okay.
it's meaning the same thing.
Okay, and does that vary by region or city? Obviously, Palo Alto is a very
It does. It
place.
does.
Okay.
And you're in the Santa Clara County metropolitan area, so Palo Alto fits within that.
Okay, great, thank you. Some more just very small, probably a little nitpicky, but I noticed that in the report, it mentions that there's a 25% reduction in homelessness in Palo Alto. In talking to all of these agencies, do you think that that reduction in homelessness is due to prior year projects that we have been funding? Or I also serve on the RV Dwellers Committee, and it looks in some ways that some of the homelessness is actually just moving south to Mountain View where there are more services. So I'm curious if any of the recipients spoke to that.
You know, they did not, but it's a good question, and it's something we can pose with. I think that involves 2 different things. It would probably be Life Moves and with Move Mountain View, because they're both dealing with either shelter or unsheltered homeless individuals. So I think maybe panning that question to those and possibly, getting that feedback back to you. I could do that, but I haven't noticed it in the applications that we get that they feel that their services should be decreased. I mean, they request more than what we can fund because of that 15% cap. So there's never been a time where they're not spending that money,
Yeah.
and their accomplishments certainly reflect that they meet their goals every year.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't asking the question in the sense that we should fund homelessness projects less. I was more thinking like maybe something we're doing is working and we should fund it more. And I was curious if it
Well,
was that, but we also previously did have a speaker, I think it was from Life's Moves. And they had done a survey of homelessness and it looked like homelessness in Palo Alto had decreased, but it had significantly increased in Mountain View. So I was curious if that was one of the things that had been addressed in any of the funds, any of the applications. Okay, a couple more questions, sorry. There was some money that was left unspent, and I was curious why that would have been the case.
Monies that were unspent there's a variety of things that happened. The Mitchell Park Place project that we had allocated over $350,000 to, they determined a couple months ago that they didn't need CDBG funds. So that money has to be reprogrammed this year for other projects. There's been some funding in the past that was unspent from various sub-recipients. There was a little bit of funding that Rebuilding Together didn't use.
Yeah, it looked like some COVID testing that probably wasn't needed anymore. Yeah.
And the one was, COVID, by the time they had their contract and, or we were about to give them a contract, they're like, we're not required to be testing anymore. So we don't want to take your money. So that had to be put back in and reprogrammed.
Right. That's great. Any more color on the Mitchell Park? $300,000 unspent just is such a giant chunk of change. Did they find an alternative funding source?
They did. And, I have to go back to them to see what it was. At the time, they were like, well, we didn't want to talk. It was a little to the vest a little bit on what that was, but I don't know. Maybe other people from the city know.
Well, it's great.
I can speak to that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Rebecca.
No problem. So when the developer went out to bid, the original estimates, that had been given turned out to be firm, and so usually there's a cost increase, in this time period, but the contractor held firm. So there wasn't a gap in funding. And so they decided to not use CDBG funds, but the city did continue to support Eden Housing to the tune of $3 million split between local funds, the residential fund, as well as the local housing trust fund monies that we won from the state.
Great to hear. Thank you for the additional detail. And then finally, I noticed that the amount of money being recommended for administrative costs was actually lower this year than it was last year. And that goes against everything I've ever heard about administrative costs. And I was curious again if there was any additional color about why there would have been a 5% decrease in administrative costs.
Well, that has to do with, we used to take program income from two sources, the annual allocation and then also program income. But there is a reduction in program income this year, and so that you can only spend 20% in public admin funds any year ever. So is driven down as well as to keep that 20% cap consistent with HUD's regulation.
Great, that makes sense. So it wasn't that less funding was needed. It was just that the cap became the challenge.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all of my questions. Thanks for being patient with me.
No problem.
God for you.
Michelle, I had one question.
Please.
Yeah, so at the bottom of page 3, where it says HRC Selection Committee Review, it says if more funds are received than estimated, and number 2, increase funding for Life Moves to make the allocation half of their requested amount for FY 24-25. I just was confused by that statement and was wondering if you could clarify.
Do you want me to take that, Rebecca?
You can show your slide, Tina.
Oh, yep, I can.
I think in the summary in the staff report, there's also, a note beside each applicant, how much money they requested versus how much money is recommended to fund. And so you can see that it's less than half of what their request is right now for Life Moves. That would be on page 7 of your staff report. Life Moves was requesting approximately $70,000, and the recommendation is a little over 30,000. So it's less than half at present.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, you can take public comment, and then the HRC can discuss if it wants to, which of the recommendations it moves and how. I mean, the recommended recommendations.
Is there any
Oh,
public
could I
comment?
provide one more clarifying
Oh,
comment?
sorry.
I just, as a person who used to work in housing a lot, I usually have the area median income of what is extremely low income and that definition. I usually have it saved on my phone, as all good people who used to work in housing do. So just to give you an idea, extremely low income, these are all set by the area median income in the county. So extremely low income is 0 to 30% of area median income. Very low income is 30 to 50% of area median income. Low income is 51 to 80% of area median income. So to give you an example, and this varies by household size and income. So to give you an idea, like somebody making, for currently as they stand, making 20% area median income, that's one person making at most $25,380 a year.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Great. So if I can ask the commissioners, if you're not speaking, to turn it off, because that allows the other ones to be louder. But let me see. We don't have any cards for this, but let me check if there is anyone in the public who wishes to speak to agenda item number 2, community development block grant. Please raise your hand. I see no hands. So you can go now forward to entertain some recommendations.
Let's entertain some recommendations.
And I believe staff, do you have draft recommendations in a presentation somewhere that you could bring to the screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So there's those 3 things that we have on the screen. Can everyone see the screen again? Yes?
Yeah, can see it.
Okay. So provide recommendations for fiscal year 24-25 entitlement program. Those funding recommendations, they're in your packet, as well as we had a couple slides on those. Provide direction for the contingency plan. I think when we say that, were you okay with the contingency plan that the HRC selection committee proposed? And I can go back and forth through this if we need to, and then recommend to council to approve the draft annual action plan for this fiscal year. And if there's anything to amend tonight, we'll include those as well from HRC's funding recommendations.
Could you talk to number 2 in a little more detail?
So let's go back. So the contingency plan, if we're getting a little bit less or a little bit more. If we talk about if we're getting a little bit more funding, to ensure that we're still meeting those caps for public services and planning administration, the 15% and 20% respectively, and then increase, if we do get more money, we'll increase that, because we still have to meet that cap, but maybe if there's a small increase on public services, we would provide that to Life Moves. And then also that extra amount after we reach the cap, we would provide funding proportionately. If we had more on top of that after they've reached their at least getting half of what they requested, that we keep the current level for Project Sentinel and then increase proportionately throughout the other public services.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then any other funds that are left over would all, after the caps are sufficiently taken care of, that they go into the public facilities project.
Okay.
And then if we have decreases, it looks a little different. Whereas we'd be making sure again that we meet that 15 and 20%, but then we'd be decreasing public services like across the board, little bit for each one that we would proportionate across each one. Then if possible, maintain full funding for housing rehab and economic development, while we'd be decreasing those uncapped funds for our public facilities project. That's the contingency plan if we get more money or less money. So I think your recommendation tonight says, okay, we are okay with the contingency plan stated here in this presentation. If you wanted to change anything, you can talk about that at this time.
Commissioners? Any comments?
I just have one question. So, in the increase, it looks like we prioritized Life Moves, but in the decreases, we're doing sort of just kind of a peanut butter. Let's just spread all of the cuts across evenly. And I was wondering why on one side we are prioritizing a program, while on the other side we are doing a peanut butter method.
I think we can speak to the HRC selection committee. Perhaps the HRC member might want to speak to that, but this is directly from the HRC recommendation, the selection committee's recommendations that we're bringing forward to the HRC. So if the HRC wants to do something a little bit different, this is the opportunity here to make some adjustments.
Sure. And I wanted to clarify an earlier comment I think I said Alta Housing earlier and I meant to say Life Moves. Yeah, in our discussion, we felt like of the, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, had Life Moves requested more, they'd requested the most funding initially. And am I correct on that?
Yes, it appears so.
Yes, yeah, so we thought that there was the greatest need, and with considering the population that they serve, that would be most effective.
Thanks, that clarifies. Thank you.
But one comment, Life Moves gets a tremendous amount of money from the city to deal with our homeless population. And did you take that into consideration with the other employees?
If I might clarify that, the money that Life Moves gets from the city is in two buckets. It's in the CDBG bucket and the HISRAP bucket. There is a separate contract with Life Moves, but that is specifically for the Home Key project, which is not yet operational, as you all know. So there isn't another bucket that I know of except for these two that they are getting funding for, and they are funding for two separate things. So what they're getting for his rep is not funding the same thing what they're asking for funding for CDBG.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So should we move forward with the recommendations? Is that now?
That's up to the HRC, to someone to make a motion. You could, I would ask Rebecca or Claire, it seems to me these should be individual motions, or are you okay with just moving the totality of the staff recommendations? What do you recommend?
Well, I suppose if there were any changes in the funding allocations put forward in the staff report, that we would need to also amend the annual action plan, because the draft annual action plan is consistent with all of the funding recommendations in the staff report. So I would say that if there was a need for any discussion of any of the the recommended actions, number one would be most important to know if there would be any changes. And then it would be good to just know if the contingency plan as proposed, was favored or not. And then the third one would be, we would know then if it's just a straight recommendation of the draft annual action plan to city council, or if there would be any amendments to it. So I think taking them in turn, if there was any discussion on any of these, because we don't know yet. But if there were no changes, then I think that they could all be moved as one.
Well, with that knowledge, I move that we approve the recommendations in totality.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Do you call the vote or do I?
You do, Chair.
Okay.
I will say, just for anybody watching, I will ask Elena just that if there are individual things to provide people that are looking back at this meeting, that I will ask her to just include the contingency plans in the actual motion itself.
Yes, on your screens right now is a kind of draft motion. If you could read that and let me know if there's anything that needs to be updated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah, yes, looks great.
Looks good.
Is that a second?
That is a second.
Okay.
I believe that the action plan is attachment B. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I was going to point out the same thing, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Let's take the vote. Which way? Please.
Aye.
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 It passes unanimously. So we should move
Yeah,
forward.
thank you, staff and consultants.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank the subcommittee for all the work they did.
It was really, really wonderful working with our staff. We have really fantastic staff.
CDBG is really good work. So thank you. Let's move forward to item 3. The next step for the listening sessions is the review and formulation of recommendations based on information presented at both listening sessions. The direction is that there'll be 2 subcommittees and they'll meet in advance of an HRC special retreat on March 6th. Now, Chair talked to me before she got on her plane about some of the things she thought were important. She was questioning that, do we do 2 subcommittees from the 2 communities, or do we further divide and talk about education and culture, and maybe the third category, inclusive of hate crimes, which dovetails on another subcommittee that Commissioner Smith and I sit on, that has been sitting quietly on the sidelines until this moment. So I think we have a few things to decide. We want this to be done in a very egalitarian manner. We want to decide who will be on which subcommittee, and we want to recommend that they get together very quickly because we have a month to really talk this through, find out what we want to do going forward. Now, Commissioner Smith will probably be involved in both subcommittees. I haven't heard that from him personally, but I would recommend that that continues forward.
Okay, he communicated to me
Okay.
because his understanding of the recommendation that he was making is that it would be the 2, the Muslim Palestinian and the Israeli Jewish. And since we can only have 3 commission members on each, so that means only 6 commission members could be on the subcommittees. He was going to step away so that those present could be on it, but would be, really involved in the conversation at the retreat. So just, you brought that up, so I'm just bringing what he
Sure.
shared with me.
And I want to reiterate Chair Eberle's real questioning about if we should have a side group really focused on education. That was very important to her as she left me on the conversation later this afternoon. So we should talk about that and how we handle that and how we move that forward and who gets involved and who doesn't get involved. And let's start that. Do we do this before public comment?
So yeah, commission members can ask you or staff or others any clarification questions. And at that point, we can open it up for oral communications for input on the agenda item, the creation of subcommittees, and then it would go back to the commission for further discussion and voting.
I don't know if this is a clarifying question. This might actually be better brought up.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. This isn't exactly a clarifying question. Well, I do want some clarity, but also maybe it goes to the discussion at the end. So I'll raise it now, but let me know if it better fits in the discussion afterwards. In listening to the experiences of people who have dealt with anti-Arab hate in Palo Alto and the people who have dealt with anti-Jewish hate in Palo Alto, saw so many similarities in their recommendations. Of course, the specifics vary you know, whether we're talking about Holocaust denial or other, you know, like that's obviously very specific to the Jewish community. But I'm curious why we think there needs to be very separate committees for the solutioning. I understand why we needed that in the listening because they're very sensitive topics. And we wanted to have both communities feel very comfortable coming forward and discussing them amongst their own community members. But I'm curious why in the solutions, we necessarily need separate solutions.
Can I choose to answer that, please?
Yeah, and I can answer based on what the chair,
The former chair
No,
recommended.
no, if you would let me just continue, I was going to say that the chair of that subcommittee. I was not. There is the committee that was working on this issue.
I stand corrected.
Vice Chair, can you give me your sense? I would love to hear what you're thinking.
The commission believes they want to keep these separate and then come together at the retreat.
Okay.
I personally, stepping away without my hat on, believe it should be a cohesive discussion. I don't speak for the commission. The commission voted to move forward in this manner.
Okay.
I'm a team player, so here we are.
I just don't remember the commission making a vote on that.
No, we didn't.
Oh, sorry.
It was the chair.
Okay.
This is what the chair wanted to go forward with.
Okay, so the idea is we will brainstorm solutions independently, but ultimately we are going to come together with a unified set of recommendations. And there will be a chance to discuss them together, right?
I'm hoping.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the understanding that I can only speak to what he discussed with me, and that was that he felt like that each community deserved its own space and attention in the review of the information presented. And because subcommittees can only have three
Three, yeah.
people each, and regarding all the information that needed to be reviewed, that would be hard for three people. But you can also consider, other ways of framing the subcommittees, but each subcommittee can only have three people. If it's more, then it's a majority of the HRC, and then it's a noticed meeting.
To clarify, we can only have 3 commissioners.
Yep.
But the subcommittees can be larger. There can be more members.
No.
No?
I don't think they can.
It says there is a limit to 3 commissioners who can serve on each subcommittee, period. We're not limiting the size.
What can you elaborate are you referring to, that there can be other people on those subcommittees? Is that what you're
Yes.
speaking to?
Yes, we had a program with 3 representatives from each community that made the recommendations. And I'm assuming those 3 get to decide how they want to move forward. If all 3 want to be on, or they want 1 spokesperson.
Well, that is not something that's automatic, but that is something that if it's the will of the commission to include community members, that's not a normal practice for when the HRC comes up with recommendation. It's usually that isn't a usual practice. That's all I can say as staff, and you can go from there, but yeah.
I think the community members gave their recommendations to us in the listening sessions.
They did.
Yeah, so that's our kind of starting places, those recommendations from the communities. Now the subcommittees are coming up to kind of really put some meat on the bones of those recommendations. That's my Is that
Yeah.
your is that,
Yes.
do we share an understanding or am I confused?
And, okay, so so it sounds like the commissioner to my right and to my left both feel that there should be a, instead of divisive, a more cohesive subcommittee. Am I correct?
Or so I'm okay backing off on this because it sounds
Yeah.
like we're just coming up. There needs to be a way to divide this somehow because it's a lot of work.
Okay.
And so we are going to come together ultimately with shared recommendations. It's just that the brainstorming around those recommendations initially will be separate, and then in the retreat, we'll come together with a
Okay.
combined.
All right.
To
okay,
combine
because
them.
what
Is that,
yeah, that's good. What I was going to suggest is maybe we just need then one subcommittee of 3 people to tackle this. But if the volume of information is too much, and it sounds like it might be. So yeah, so the initial recommendation here, 2 subcommittees, 3 people each. That's all 6 of us.
Yeah.
We should go ahead with that.
Okay, but I point of information, when we did the HESREP work, we had a community representative. And it does set a precedent for having communications and an individual on the subcommittee.
I'm not saying that you can't. The HRC can make that determination. I just say traditionally that is not something that happens because it's taking the information that was kind of an outlier for the HRC and something that we've just started doing. So I'm not here to say what you can't do. I was just getting information traditionally that does not happen, but yes, it did happen in the HISRAP situation.
And I'm a relative newcomer. It's only been 3 years, not the kind of wealth of knowledge that you
But that
have.
was like, I think the member there was just an individual that did not have any affiliation with HISRAP or any of the organizations that were going to be reviewed. So that's the only observation that I would make.
Can I just make sure I'm following everything that we've said so far? We're talking about our retreat is in 1 month, and we're talking about in the next month, we have one subcommittee discussing the Jewish community solutions, one committee discussing the Muslim and Arab community solutions. And we come back, what is going to be the work of those two subcommittees, since both communities have given us recommendations?
It will be synthesizing the materials and requests and recommendations of each community.
Okay.
Okay, it is not inclusive of the chair's last minute thinking on including other subcommittees that could be dual or singular together. She was very concerned about education and as she went to her flight.
And were you saying earlier, you said you currently sit on a subcommittee that is DEI?
Our chair thought that there was a subcommittee we had already established on hate crimes that Commissioner Smith and I was on. I did not have that recollection, and I want to turn it to staff to find out.
Is your question, what is your question specifically, Vice Chair?
Exist?
What subcommittee?
On hate crimes.
Yes, there is a, I think Elaine is looking up for the members. So at the retreat and post the last retreat, that is one of your work plan items. And I think there were a couple commissioners identified to work that. I thought it was Commissioner Krause and Commissioner Savage from my best recollection, and possibly Commissioner Smith is my recollection from the past. She is looking it up as we speak.
Good, because I did not have a clear recollection of what had occurred.
Right, I think that's something that we just haven't, that subcommittee has just not met yet. on hate crimes.
Thank you. All right, so it sounds like we are, there will be 2 subcommittees, and we need to decide who
Is
is
on them.
doing what.
That's correct.
I know I just said this other thing, but I'm gonna just say something and then I'm gonna probably take it back in 1 second. But I was
What?
I was thinking of another way of organizing the subcommittees. And there could be a way of doing it, and it sounds like maybe this is what Commissioner Eberly is also thinking as well. Maybe one around education, one around safety and security.
And one around hate crimes.
Well, that would be safety and security.
All right.
So
That's a
one is
nice
more
word.
cultural, one's more criminal, like
Yeah.
that could be the 2 ways around. If we wanted to divide up the work in a way that wasn't, and then we could look across both recommendations, sets of recommendations from both communities and bring together the safety and security recommendations and the increasing awareness ones.
I would be in support of that. I'm frankly like very anxious that this is a lot of administrative work for 1 month. And I'm worried if we have 2 different subcommittees for 2 different communities, I'm worried about those conversations being equitable. And I think that's a much more equitable way to frame this.
Commissioner.
Your microphone, and I'm thinking we're getting into discussion when we probably should go to public comment. So I'm sorry.
Should we hang tight?
Why don't you hang tight, because first it's just questions, but I want Commissioner Shea to finish her comment, of course.
Oh, I just mentioned, I don't have a preference. I do believe it's a lot of work. So either split is fine with me.
And I found my previous notes. The ad hoc subcommittees that are currently formed are inclusion and belonging with Chair Eberly, Commissioner Shea and Stimler, public safety, Vice Chair Kraus and Commissioner Savage, and climate change, which has Commissioners Causey, Stimler, and Smith.
So, and underneath those are specific projects. So hate crimes, as Elena said, probably fits under the public safety. So you have these overarching, things on your work plan, and then like smaller projects that were more, takeable by a small group of commissioners to work on.
Well, we certainly got a specific set of recommendations from each community at this point in time. And we've all done good work together. Let's figure out how to proceed. But let's take public comment first.
Okay, I'll just wait till Elena gets it up on the screen.
Okay. And it's difficult to hear Elena.
Okay, why don't I just call on the names, and then Elena will add the folks that have their name online. So the first speaker is Uzma. Uzma, if you want to come to the front, you will have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me? It's working. Okay, hi. First, I wanted to thank the HRC committee for the listening session around increasing Islamophobia and anti-Arab hate. The listening session made us feel heard and seen, and we appreciate you giving us this platform. I also want to thank the HRC for being considerate of Ramadan dates. Minka proactively reached out to me and asked about our availability during that time. And after we had a few exchanges, she told me that you had decided to have it not during Ramadan, which we really, really appreciate. I truly mean that. You have no idea how many times I've had work events, offsites, kids' field trips, parties come up during Ramadan, and I've had to bring it up after the fact when everything has been scheduled. So it just means so much to us that you take our holidays and our religious traditions into consideration. Our community had a number of asks during the listening session, including recognition of holidays, festivals, educational events, and adoption of anti-hate definitions. I'm eager to work with the subcommittees being created today on how to implement these recommendations. We hope that this will make our community here in Palo Alto stronger and more inclusive for all of us. In addition to the subcommittees, which include HRC members, I'd like to learn more about how they will be functioning between now and the retreat, what exactly their schedule would be, and how the community members like myself that are, part of each subcommittee, well, not part of the subcommittee, but are, community members from the
That's okay.
the communities at the listening session. So how do we get involved between now and the retreat? And I believe that we will be invited to the retreat. So I'm curious if we'll also be invited to meetings before the retreat and how that would work. I also wanted to know about the global versus local distinction. When we had our listening sessions, we were given the rules to just focus on our local community and local issues as much as we can, because that makes it easier for the HRC to implement actual actions in our local community. I wanted to know how that would work, and if, when we come together at the retreat, that will be a rule as well. I look forward to working with committee members who are invested in elevating the well-being of our Muslim and Arab families as we strive for a fully inclusive Palo Alto community. Thank you.
The next speaker is Nadir. Nadir, I believe you're in person. You have 3 minutes.
Hello. I also just wanted to say thank you for focusing on this matter and for the earlier listening session. As you know, there's been a lot of tension in the city. So this work is important now more than ever. We as a community would like to do whatever we can to help in this effort. As a community, we'd like to see, things go back to normalization and kind of help fix the divide that's developed over the last few months with our neighbors and folks in the community. So I think this is not going to be easy work, but it's really important. And I know it's a lot of work for all of you in a short amount of time with 1 month to a retreat. So thank you. One question, or I just want to make sure we're including in the subcommittees, is education. Because I think when I heard them restated here as public safety and security, which includes hate crime, inclusion and belonging, and then climate change. And I was curious if education is still going to be covered in one of those groups or not. So if we could address that, that would be great. And last comment is if we could just make sure that there is definitely equal time and representation from all sides to make sure that the issues are addressed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is online. It's community member. Community member, go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I need 3 minutes, but I have been really grateful to all of you for. I was at the Jewish community event where I think 30 to 40 people spoke. I thought everybody was fabulous. As a member of the Jewish community and somebody who I was born in Israel, lived there for a few years, and then grew up mostly in Palo Alto. I have no animosity to Palestinians. I feel heartbreak and pain for what is going on for Palestinians and for Israelis. I think we are all victims, and I think that's why we're having a lot of discord going on in these meetings. I would really prefer to see, I didn't realize that there was a meeting for Jewish people and a meeting for Palestinians. I thought that was a little bit strange. I'm an American and I don't see myself as one or the other, and I think we should be together. So I really like what Michelle Kraus was suggesting. I want to give a resounding approval to her saying that we should be team players and that we need to be together and we should not be having these subcommittees. I think it was great opportunity that we had to speak already. when people were very emotional, and it's a very emotional situation. But I think we really need to work together about this is a global humanitarian crisis, and we are all suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sarah. Sarah, go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I also, very similar to the previous comments, I just wanted to thank the council or the committee for creating a space for the Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim community to be heard. And I'm sure, for the Israeli and Jewish members as well, for that, creating a space for them. I think your willingness to listen is a vital step to acknowledge and addressing the concerns of community members who definitely feel unseen. Similar to the comment of the previous caller, it would be great to kind of form after the subcommittees, kind of have like that, maybe one event where we kind of, come together. And I think that's a true showing of unity, which has been echoing, in the city council and so forth. Everyone recognizes that we need to kind of come together. There is a lot of shared history and mutual respect between the Jewish and Muslim communities. Both of our religions emphasize justice and compassion and social responsibility. So, I think working together to kind of, create a more unified position is probably, a better route. But I'm grateful to have given the opportunity to hear and to be allowed to speak about experiences growing up as a Muslim, and also listening to other Palestinians kind of come with their experiences as well. Thank you again for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing what in 1 month from now, seeing what the subcommittees come together. And then, as I think you guys mentioned, there's going to be from that subcommittee a kind of a coming together, and that would be interesting to see as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't see any other raised hands, Vice Chair.
Okay. Can we ask if anyone else in chambers still wants to talk, or are we done?
Yeah, you can see if someone didn't raise their hand but wanted to. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I want to leave the opportunity open. Okay, let's move on. Let's open discussion among the commissioners.
Can I just ask, give a clarification to the gentleman who asked about that climate change? And those were just listing HRC subcommittees that just exist in total that was established at the work plan. That's not specifically talking about this issue. So yeah, some of them may have some overlap. The commission may make the decision to use one of those subcommittees as part of the work.
That's correct.
So that there might be an overlap there, but like the climate change, that one was just solely for the general work of the commission. So I return it to you, Vice Chair.
And we were concerned with the sensitivities surrounding security, safety, and events that were hateful, even before October. It's one of the basic tenets of this group and who we are and what we've been asked to address by the city of Palo Alto. So, Commissioner Stimmel?
Yeah, sorry, I had one more idea based on that comment actually about our subcommittees. We could also, I know I keep evolving my thinking, but we could also subdivide the committees. We could just use the existing committees. And we could use was it a public safety committee?
Yes.
The public safety committee could perhaps tackle the questions around public safety. And then the DEI committee could take on the issues around education and awareness.
DEI?
There's a DEI and belonging committee. That's myself and Amy. And I think one other person. Is it? Who is it? Adriana. Okay, yeah, the three of us.
Potentially,
that's another
interesting.
option.
And maybe interesting. Thank you.
What Commissioner Stimler just said, that is, I think, the most effective way forward.
Katie, I just cut. You won't be on one of the subcommittees because you're at climate change, but is that okay with you?
That is okay.
I think you're, yeah, I think.
And you can use those existing commissions and you can just go up to a third person. So if those each have two, you can, those can invite another person to participate.
Oh, good.
If you want a third on yours.
Sure. Okay.
I really
And-
like that idea. I just wanted to say.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I just mentioned that I really like that idea.
Thank you. So, commissioners, how should we go forward? Should we utilize our underlying committees that already exist? Okay. Would someone make a motion?
I move that we do that option. Oops. I move that we utilize our existing subcommittees.
Infrastructure? What? Our subcommittee's infrastructure?
Right, right. And proceed from there.
And I'll second that.
Elena, could you vocally tell each subcommittee who are the members that exist?
Yes, in inclusion and belonging, it is Eberly, Shea, and Stimler. Public safety is Kraus and Savage.
Okay. The first one was Smith.
So you are missing Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Causey.
I know.
Okay.
Oh, you mean
As it's if the inclusion and belonging is Chair Eberly, Commissioner Shea, and Commissioner Stimler, and safety and public safety is Vice Chair Kraus and Commissioner Savage. Yeah, then that subcommittee could take one more person, so that would be either Commissioner Causey or Commissioner Smith. So, and Commissioner Smith has said he's okay with not being on a subcommittee, but if, Commissioner Causey doesn't want to, then we can go back to Commissioner Smith, but I'm just sharing what he shared with me.
And what about Commissioner Stimmel?
I've been on the Inclusion and Belonging Committee, and I just
Okay.
wanted to say one thing just to one of the public comments. I think it was you, Nadir. That would include the education piece of this.
And getting back to the individuals, I would be honored if Commissioner Causey would join us.
I second that.
This is a really important topic and I want to make sure it gets the attention it deserves. And I'm very aware in the next month, I'm going to be spread really thin. So and I know that Commissioner Smith is also very, very spread thin right now. I will agree. We got to be efficient.
Would you prefer to defer?
What can we check both my availability and Commissioner Smith's availability for the next month and send us some dates and let's see what works. See who's
Okay.
available.
And Commissioner Shea? As I mangle your name?
Yes, I would like to be on the inclusion and belonging subcommittee, and I agree with all the recommendations so far.
You can be on two.
I think there's plenty of work for us at this point.
Okay.
And we're
I'm
coming
just
together. And the thing
trying-
is, let's keep in mind, this is just for the next few weeks and then we're coming together.
And then
So-
we're coming together.
Yeah.
I'm just checking
Yeah.
that everybody feels
Yes,
comfortable.
thank you.
That's all.
Yes, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate your offer.
Yes. Now, does this supersede two individual subcommittees? Question.
Pardon me, can you repeat that? Does this supersede two individual subcommittees? I'm not sure.
I got you. Never mind.
We don't have to, we won't have subcommittees. We'll just use the existing ones. One other just point of clarification again for the public comments. These subcommittees can reach out as needed to the communities. We'll start with the recommendations that were given and the listening sessions. There were some really concrete recommendations, which provided us with a really excellent place to start. I think actually we'll probably do two things. One is to rewatch those listening sessions and really digest what was said again. And the second is to really look back at what those recommendations were. And then for the organizations that were present in those, I think we will reach out. Most likely you will hear from the subcommittee members.
I
No?
want to raise the question of having a community member involved. I think it's kind of important this time, but I'd love all of your thoughts, not just me. They're living it, they're breathing it, they're feeling it. We need
My
we
sense
need
is-
to capture that.
Yeah.
All right?
I think my one sense there is that we have done a lot of listening. We will continue to do listening at the retreat. And I think we can use the folks who come forward and offered help already as consultants. I don't know that we want them to be, my concern is with such a short amount of time to complicate it. Because I think even just bringing together three commissioners sometimes is challenging. So if we could keep it relatively simple for the initial brainstorming, basing it off of the feedback we've heard, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear if that jives with
I
everyone
want to
else.
know what everybody thinks. It's not my show. It's everybody.
I prefer to keep the subcommittees as is because I have concerns on the selection process of the community members invited.
Yep, I second that concern and also the concern and also everything that Commissioner Stimler raised.
Okay. I can deal with that.
I'll just say on staff makes a commitment to assist the subcommittee members with scheduling and to get you out the background information that you would need. I think I think this has been a very good discussion amongst the commissioners. I will just need to think, as you know, Elena and I work to best resource you in your work when it was more the, and I appreciate and I like the direction that you're going. It was just getting you information to resource you. If it was divided between the two, then we were going to send you like the video from the one meeting and all the information presented. It's a little bit more challenging because, you know, we'll have to go through the information. I mean, the stuff that was sent in, that will be simple. I think I would just like direction from the commissioners. We were going to ask you to watch the meeting of your subcommittee again, and now it's a little different if you feel the need to watch both of them. So we're just trying to best resource your work with the information that was presented in those meetings to be
I would
helpful.
recommend that you have them available.
Yeah, we would send you a packet, like an email
Yes.
packet, and we will include I guess we'll include the same information in
Please.
both to have you skim through it. I'm just thinking of Commissioner Causey and her time. We were just trying to just provide you something a little more tailored for a subcommittee, so it didn't seem like such a big, like, oh my gosh, I have to slog through all of this. So we just were trying to set it up to resource you as best as we could.
Actually, what would be really helpful, Minka, is that if you could, that's kind of a big ask, so.
You're going to
feel
ask us
free-
to code it.
No, I'm not asking you to code it. Only if, and honestly, we could do it ourselves because we've all seen these meetings, but there's a section in each meeting where they did talk about the solutions in both meetings, kind of
The
towards.
speakers,
The speakers,
the
yeah.
speakers, but not the public comment, because sometimes
Yeah.
there were members of the public
Who brought up,
that
yeah,
brought up
solutions.
solutions. So, I mean,
I was gonna say, if you could just point each, in the packet, just point to where the solutions part of the speaker conversations were. And then I think the slides were shared from both. And I don't
yes, we'll
remember.
certainly share the
There
slides.
was
and,
there was a great,
yeah.
a mayor's guide to countering anti-Semitism, which was
Yes.
incredibly tactile. And I actually think, although it says anti-Semitism, a lot of their recommendations could actually be parallel applied to anti-Islamic hate as well. So I think just resharing that. And I don't remember if there's any similar resources around anti-Islamic hate that were tailored for local governments. But if there are, that would also be great.
Okay.
That would
So
be
Elena and I will have a conversation. We can certainly bookmark, like look at 6:10. So I
Yeah.
think maybe if we each take one of the sessions and we will make notes of the public comment time if there was something that
Was relevant.
was relevant for these two areas. And the next time we will take the cookies that the vice chair brought.
Yes, because you will deserve them, because that's
Yes.
actually a lot of work. Thank you both so much. And I will remind you that when you watch these meetings on YouTube, you don't always have to watch them in one speed. You can bump it up a little.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
a commercial.
I have a question, because I did miss the last two meetings. Is it possible to produce a transcript of both of the sessions? And I know that there are AI tools where you do not have to take those notes by hand.
The HRC used to have verbatim minutes from their meeting. We don't have that service any longer. I'd have to look to Elena, who is more technologically savvy, but
I think I can help you. I think,
Okay,
again,
there we
YouTube
go.
will auto transcribe for you.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not saying, that I've not been paid for these
Commercials.
promotions for the functionalities of YouTube, but it is a helpful tool. And it's great that we have staff who put those meetings up for everyone.
I
to
will
see.
say that it was our goal to get these out to you, in the original recommendation, like by Monday or Tuesday, because we know you all need to get together as soon as possible. You might meet and decide you need to meet more than once.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be our goal. So I'll make a promise that by Monday we'll get doodles out to the two groups, and that by the time the meeting is set up, we'll have the background information. And then you would just need to communicate to me if you wanted a second meeting. I will also say that there will be some kind of subcommittee report that needs to go with to the full commission, and those should probably be part of the agenda packet so that members of the community know and can come and give comment to what you have recommended.
Actually, that's really helpful. And at first I was like, oh, that's going to shrink our timeline because we're going to have to get things ready for the packet. But to the public's comment about when they can give feedback on the subcommittee's work, that actually is perfect, because what we can do is put together our materials for the sub packet. And then if the public would come and provide comments on those recommendations at the retreat, that would be perfect. That actually simplifies it for us and gives the public an opportunity to respond.
And just for the public to understand the HRC's process, I mean, those are just the first line of recommendations. So those will be two groups of three. That the final recommendations that will be worked on will be influenced by the opinion of people on the other subcommittee, will be influenced by, often influenced by members of the public that speak that night. So just so you understand the process, it could be at the end of the retreat that those recommendations are all voted on. It could be at the end of the retreat that you say, looks like we got pretty far there. Let's come back at the next meeting. I'm just saying the work of the HRC is, up to you to determine, but there are, many ways that can go down. I know with the work plan, sometimes you've gone as far as you can one day and then you come back at the next meeting and solidify it. So.
Well, I would just like to add that a subcommittee of two, the two of us,
Yeah.
because of the sheer volume of work, I think we really do need a third person, whether it's Commissioner Causey or Commissioner Smith.
And we're all busy.
We're all busy, true.
I know your schedule for next week.
Yeah.
I know mine. So we need a third person.
Yeah.
I believe that's Commissioner Causey.
Oh,
I missed that.
I missed it too.
That was my understanding, right, Commissioner?
I had said earlier to check my schedule and Commissioner Smith's schedule.
Okay.
And see who was available, who
Okay,
was more
on the actual
available.
meeting day.
Let's,
Just giving you my footnote.
I was gonna say, check who's more available. Again, I do think this is a very important issue, and I just wanted to also just thank staff for
Okay.
that clear.
Can I ask the input as staff is working on the doodle for these meetings? Are you asking for us to just doodle nighttime times, or are there day times that would work? I'm not asking you to look at your schedules now, but just so we have a framework for this time. And are you asking me to set up a 3-hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting? If I can get some directions, commissioners, that would be great.
For me, 2-hour nighttime meeting.
For me, daytime.
For me, 2 hours, and I prefer weekend time, so I'm not.
Oh, man, you're making it
I'm
harder.
so sorry.
No,
I
you are perfectly entitled to your
Yeah, I
choice.
just
Yes.
don't have time when I'm working.
So what we'll do is we'll provide a variety of weekday, weeknight, and weekend times. I
And
will
maybe-
say that staff will not be, it wasn't the thought that staff will be staffing these meetings, so you will have to have like an internal person that will take notes and such, and someone who volunteers to write the recommendations to give to us.
That's fair. And actually, the Belongingness Committee had a meeting scheduled, so we are on it.
Just tell me offline when that is.
We might need a second backup time just in case we don't solve everything then, but
Well, so are we to, after discussion within our subcommittee, are we expected just to come back with a list of recommendations? Or what went on with, what we discussed?
I don't think that's been fully thought through. Often it's very helpful for transparency for the public and just for the knowledge of the other commissioners to go, this is the process that we took in doing this. These are the things we considered. I mean, that can just be a paragraph. I'm not, thinking that it has to be a tip. These are the recommendations we are making. These are the things that we felt are important, but needed more time, and perhaps we can take on at another point. So those are just all the kind of options you as subcommittees can do. You can just say, these are the two, we need to talk more, but these are our top two. And you can do it that way as well. There can be recommendations to staff. There can be, such as human services, there can be recommendations for maybe for council to consider staff and other, departments doing something, or there can be recommendations to the city council.
okay, I think we're getting really, really close. One quick question. At the last meeting, we met Kojo, the new DEI
Yes.
staff member, and I'm curious if that might be it might be helpful to tap into his expertise at any point, or at least perhaps just invite him to the retreat. I don't know what that role
Let me
typically.
check
how
on
they're
that,
typically
because I know initially in his work plan as an employee, he was working on internal staff DEI issues and not community. So I can reach out to his supervisor, but it's my understanding that that greater role is not something that he's taking on at this time.
Understood. Maybe it's just something for us to consider then whether or not there's anything that internal staff could do, for example, around education.
Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly.
Okay, thank you.
There could be recommendations. We encourage staff training on XYZ. I mean, that's something you would give to the council because then council would need to direct the city manager
Awesome.
on something like that.
Very helpful. Thank you. Is there anything left to vote on? Or did we vote, did we recommend, did we
Did
vote on
the
that
vote-
recommendation?
The
No,
vote
not yet.
didn't happen.
Okay.
So could we see the recommendation?
Was it not seconded?
I had seconded the motion.
Okay, then let's vote.
Aye.
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 All the commissioners vote?
We
Okay.
did, it passed
Okay.
unanimously.
Not at this time, but if you want to talk to staff afterwards, you can. Pardon me? Education is included under, it could be included under each of those. Yeah.
I think we'll cover it mostly in inclusion and belonging.
It could be included in the public safety area because there have been incidents of events. And they've been in different categories. And education has been a very important area in which children have been talked inappropriately to. Let's move on. Are there any reports from the commissioners?
I have a small item which I wanted to bring up, which is there is a King Art Residency, which is done as a way to promote public art that celebrates inclusion in Palo Alto. And they would like an HRC member to be one of the judges to find out who will receive the residency. The original ask was that someone could join their initial panel. That would be this week, so it might have already happened.
It was today.
Oh, what's today? Okay, well then we don't have to worry about that one. The second panel will be March 7th. And they were wondering if someone would be interested in joining. I personally am available and would be interested, but I know that given all this new work, I also just wanted to see if anyone else was particularly interested because I would do it, but I'm also happy to see if anyone, there's a lot on my plate all of a sudden with this new work stream.
Me
so.
too.
Yeah, it's 9:30 to 12 if you didn't get that information, Commissioner, on the 7th.
Actually, I should just double check my calendar right now.
And I believe that ask was just to watch the presentations. There wasn't an ask to do any pre-work.
Oh, actually, I just see now I can't do it. I didn't realize it was that morning.
Yeah, March
Shoot.
7th from 9:30 to 12.
It should be really fun,
to
everybody.
watch the final presentations.
Fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that particular art display
Yeah.
is phenomenal.
Is that in person or is that virtual?
I am not sure, but I can check on that if you have an interest, Commissioner.
Yeah, I could attend if it's virtual, but not in
Okay,
person.
I will check on that. If there's no other, okay, I will check on that for you.
Any other commissioner reports? Anything from the police? Okay. I think we're going to move on. The council liaison report is Commissioner, hi.
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 Sorry, I'm not able to attend in person tonight, but I have enjoyed your meeting. And just so those watching know, I'm Julie Lithcott-Hames. I'm on the city council and I'm proud to be the city council liaison to the HRC. And a couple things that I'd like to share. First of all, gratitude to the HRC for your tremendous work. As always, just want to convey how delighted the city council is by the work that you do. I want to let you know that your listening sessions with the Jewish community and the Muslim Arab Palestinian community were really, you know this, but I want you to know that I think we all found them to be quite profound and useful. And we took your listening sessions with us in spirit to our city council priority setting meeting, which just happened a couple of weeks ago in January. And we ended up augmenting, we have 4 priorities, one on climate, one on economic stimulation, one on housing, and one on kind of health and safety. And really, in large part, I think, due to your listening sessions and just what's been happening in our community around divisiveness and hate, we augmented our priority on community health and safety so that it now reads community health, safety, wellness, and belonging. And I just want to underscore that last piece, belonging. It did require a bit of back and forth between the council members. Just as tonight, y'all have had to have some conversations about stuff and then ultimately land. I think there were some on the council who don't regularly converse in this sort of linguistic space of belonging. And so we had to do some kind of describing what we meant by it and why it was so important and why it was not redundant with wellness or safety. And we prevailed. And I'm really proud that in this moment in America, in Palo Alto, in this global moment with what's happening in the Middle East and elsewhere, that this city has stated that belonging matters. And I hope that you will feel we listen to you, just as we were listening, you were listening to the constituents. I was there for that as well. We listened to you. The council is now doubling down. I want that to then fuel you. Like, let's be in right relationship with each other as we continue to hold ourselves to higher standards for how people will feel as residents, as visitors, as business owners, in this city. So that's an update I thought you would feel good about. I certainly do. On a related note, the City Schools Liaison Committee, which is a committee that meets monthly that I chaired in 2023 with the school district and the city council, getting together to figure out what issues do we have of common concern. Last fall, we said, you know what? The children of Palo Alto need to know that there are myriad paths out of this city beyond high school, that it's not just, the narrow definition of a 4-year college where you can study engineering, right? But there are myriad things you can study in college, and you don't have to go to college. You could go to community college, you could go to a trade school, you could go straight into the workforce. And we decided to try to put together a half-day conference on this because we believe that our children, when they have this narrow definition of success, it can harm them. If they're not liking that path or they're wanting to be on that path, but they're not particularly good at it. We don't want our children to feel like losers and failures. We want our children to figure out what they're good at and what they love and go be that person. And too often in cities like ours, and ours in particular, our youth get a message that what matters is you can study one of these 5 things and only that in order to feel, successful. So we're putting on an event largely driven by staff on both the city side and the school district side. It's going to be on March 14th, which is a Saturday, I want to say. Let me check. Nope, I am wrong. March 16th. Saturday, we're holding 10 to 1 a.m. We're still putting it all together. We're doing this as a first time, hope to learn from it. But this is going to be an opportunity So just hold the date, March 16th, 10 to 1, an opportunity to come together, hear some inspiring stories from people who've graduated from Palo Alto schools and have gone on to a myriad of careers that, people aren't constantly thinking about. We want to encourage the arts. We want to encourage government and community service and nonprofits. We want to encourage industries that are well beyond engineering and academia, which seems to be what our kids are steered towards. So I'm telling you all this, and I'm sorry for being long-winded, because I really think that this is about treating our youth in a way that respects who they are, rather than trying to turn our youth into who we need them to be, if that makes sense. And I think there is very much a human relations, belonging, health, wellness component to this effort. So I wanted you to know about it. I hope if you're around, you'll come and check it out. We'll just stay tuned. We don't know if it's going to be at Mitchell Park or Lucy Stern. We're just figuring it out. But March 16th, 10 to 1. And really hopeful that it'll be the beginning of a broader set of more consistent conversations that help all of the youth in our magnificent city know there's a place for them out in the world, and it's for them to figure it out. And with that, that's all for me, and just gratitude again for what you do. And it's a joy to be a liaison to this committee.
Thank you. Staff, do you have some updates for us?
The only thing is, I've heard from most of the commissioner, a couple I still need to hear back from on those additional dates of making it I think, isn't it like the super whatever for like college basketball in March Madness? You have the opportunity to have HRC Madness with up to 3 meetings next month. So if you haven't responded to my email already, please do so. And then we will base, if we're going to have a regular March meeting based on your responses. So thank you.
I think, do we have any more questions? Any other comments other than commercials?
I just want to say how grateful I am to be on this commission with you all. This is big stuff we've been tackling. I got a slow start when I started last summer, and now we're really deep in it, and it's just been thank you all for
from another
for the hard work that's about to happen this month.
Thank you. I think we're adjourned.